I decided earlier than that, but a lot of folks didn't. And we kind of fell in love, most of us did. You know, we got to do these great things, break concrete cylinders, and look at engineering analysis, stresses and strains and bending moments, listen to these exciting professors. There's some of mine up there that kind of look like that, and solve differential equations and everything. But we loved it. And you remember that feeling that you had and I had, you know, when we started our career. You know, this was our first love in many, many ways. And when we graduated then, you know, we went from, you know, from that experience into our honeymoon with our profession. For me, it was sitting at the back end of a drill rig and taking soil samples. You remember how you felt that first day that you went out to a job site? You look at the picture on the top right. That's kind of how I felt, except I think that I held the drawings upside down. I didn't know how to read a set of plan sheets and, you know, specifications. What are those? And the whole world was kind of in front of us, and we were a little bit awestruck and inspired. We ran a lot of analyses, met with people, maybe did some field testing. My first love was called Harding Lawson Associates. So that was a company in Southern California. I'd graduated from Berkeley, and I joined this company, and I was in love, you know, with the profession at the time. But after about 3 or 4 years in the field, I felt like I needed some counseling, because the shine had kind of come off the relationship that I had with Harding Lawson Associates, and I switched jobs. And I kind of got my romance back at that time, you know, and I don't know if anybody on the phone and in the part of this webinar feels that way, but I imagine all of us kind of did that. And I think a lot of people switch jobs after a few years because they're kind of searching for that feeling all over again. And we took our vows with another lover. In my case, her name was Shannon Wilson. That's a company in St. Louis, and I got to do some specialty geotechnical stuff. And I got to do some really fun stuff, like work on the Big Dig and work on some nuclear power plants and really interesting engineering. But this relationship also only, for me, lasted about 4 years. 4 years later, I started to kind of lose that love. And with time, I think is what happens. A marriage strains again because of the gap of the expectations for all of us in our careers. You know, the promise is we're going to get some exciting engineering, solve hard problems, do great work on some neat projects. That's the promise. But the reality, day to day, in many cases, is timesheets and billability. We have small budgets. You know, we didn't even talk about budgets in college. You know, we had to do bids to win work. You know, I couldn't believe it when I started my career that we'd have to do that. I thought we did proposals and got selected on qualifications, but that wasn't the case, at least not in all projects. And we couldn't quite do the kind of the things that we wanted to do that kind of invested us in that love relationship we had in our profession. But I might say it wasn't always this way. If we look back to the roots of our profession, you know, we did some really cool things. Here's some pictures of our profession at its start. You know, our civil ancestors built some amazing things. Sometimes you look at these structures and you say, I have no idea how they could have conceived that and laid it out and built it in the way that they did back in the day. The historical observational method was used, a mixture of experimentation and art and geometric rules. We look at civil engineering structures through the decades. Now, this is from somewhat of a geo kind of perspective, but the Egyptians, you know, 2,000 years ago, more than that, 4,000 years ago, they built these huge structures, these pyramids, and everything was great. But they learned some lessons along the way. This picture on the top left shows a picture of the bent pyramid. It's called the bent pyramid because if you look at the slope angles, it's steeper at the bottom and shallower slope at the top. And what happened with this particular pyramid the archaeologists have discovered is that it had a failure, a bearing capacity failure. And after that, they decided then to go ahead and make the slopes flatter. And all of the subsequent pyramids after that had a flatter slope. And they also discovered the wonders of over-excavation and recompaction. They took out the bad soil and replaced it with better stuff. And so that was already the beginning of ground improvement 2,000 years ago. Over in Babylon, they used reeds to reinforce the structure. This structure here is in modern-day Iraq, and it's still standing after 1,500 years. It's reinforced that way. The Great Wall of China is on ground that was reinforced and camped and improved with stones. So, you know, our ancestors did some pretty cool things. When we look at foundations, which is near and dear to my heart, Julius Caesar crossed the Nile and
That's smoky, Tim.
Yeah. Was that a question? Okay, I'll keep going. Julius Caesar crossed the Nile, not the Nile, the Rhine on bridges that were on piles. There was scour that was prevented by other kinds of piles. The Rialto Bridge in Venice is on piles. So, you know, this whole thing occurred a long time ago. As we marched through the Middle Ages, we started building larger structures. This is, everybody knows what this structure is. I didn't know about some soft clay on one side and not so much on the other side. They didn't have soil borings back then, and they also didn't have industry groups that would help us make sure we manage our risk and those kinds of things. So our practices had to begin to change as we started getting into the Middle Ages. And the big thing that changed us considerably and significantly was the construction of the great cathedrals. There's two here, both in the UK, actually all three in the UK. St. Paul's Cathedral, huge structure in London that settled about 3 inches during construction. The Salisbury Cathedral also settled during construction. And the Malmesbury Abbey Cathedral, what's cool about that picture, you can see the flying buttresses on the side to stabilize those facade walls against lateral loads. Again, they just kind of figured that out as they went along. But that cathedral collapsed as a result of a combination of differential settlement and then some heavy wind loads. And so we started learning some real lessons back then. And we started needing some mathematical help in our profession to get us through. Our modern roots were French. Coulomb was in the 1700s, and he applied mathematics to shear strength. Everybody knows about the Moore Coulomb failure strength. That was pretty cool, the beginning of numbers applied to engineering. More French, Rankine, he's a guy that does earth pressures. I think he was actually from Belgium, but I call that French. Henry Darcy, Darcy's Law, for those of us not just in geo, but in water resources. We use that every day, you know, permeability. So we started to get in the 1800s formulation in our profession on the engineering methods. In the geotechnical profession, then the Germans took over back in the 1900s. So Carl Terzaghi conceived of effective stress. That was only about 100 years ago. People like Don Brown and Tom Shipwright and I, we use this every day. Arthur Casagrande, plasticity, pretty cool stuff. That's a little less than 100 years ago. Kurt Atterberg, good Austrian. He names a test right after himself, so he goes down in infamy for the rest of his life as somebody who has a test named after him. And you can see the profession started evolving and changing. And one thing that you've noticed all the way go through that we have so many innovations and changes. So now here we have our soil investigation methods. That's an early CPT method on the right side. With dial gauges and those kinds of things, and soil borings and N values and all of these things started getting advanced in the 1900s. So closer to my heart, I'm a ground improvement guy. The ground improvement methods then came on board to our profession back in the 1930s. A guy named Keller, the company Keller is named after him, invented the vibratory compactor. used for sands. It was in Germany. Wick drains for soft soils. You have those down in Wilmington and those kinds of places, invented by a guy named Shellman at the Swedish Geotechnical Institute in the 40s. Soil mixing was invented right here at home. A company called Intrusion Prepack in Cleveland, Ohio in the 1950s. So we started inventing new things. And we had to design our structures around these inventions that allowed us to do things that we couldn't before. As we got into the 50s through the 70s, we kept changing things, inventing an electric cone penetrometer, helped us explore things, and the finite element method, which as geotechnical engineers laugh about it because people say they can apply it to just about anything and get any answer you want. On the structural side, it's a little bit more linear, but on the geotechnical side, we have some variability in what we can predict with the FEA. But all of these things represent huge step changes in our profession. And by the 1980s, we had geosynthetics and geo-environmental issues that we had to grapple with. But things started changing already in the 1980s in our civil engineering profession as a whole. And I'm going to show you the results now of some surveys that were put together by GBA, which is the Geotechnical Business Association, used to be called ASFE. This is similar to CEC for folks. And this is the type of skills that are offered these days by geotechnical engineering companies. Do geotechnical engineering, and they provide environmental services, construction and geology, civil, and some others. And you can see that the profession, what used to be a straight up geotechnical engineering firm, is now providing many other services. And I think that's true across most of our profession. So we found new challenges that helped us refresh our love in our profession throughout the years, but things started to change. And when asked what the top business challenges are to the leaders of these companies, this is what the GBA found out. The technical challenges are about 7% of what's on the minds of these CEOs. General business, 15, legal, 19, of course, that's always important. Staffing and leadership, something that we tend not to do so well in the civil field or in the engineering field, 28% makes sense. But commoditization is 30%, 31%. So commoditization was the one thing that unites folks on the geo side, and I think also on the general civil side. So the question is why? Why are we facing all of these commoditization pressures these days? And we didn't have them so much in the past. Now there's a couple of ways to think about why. Why is, of course, the answer to the question. But there's a guy out there named Simon Sinek. And Simon Sinek is a thinker, and he teaches us about something called the golden circle. And the golden circle is the way that our brains as people work. We think we make decisions based on the what and how of a situation. But he teaches us that's not really the case. Most of us make decisions on the why, the emotional thing, the emotional feeling that we have when we are making a decision. And it's much more emotional than you might think. And he goes on to say, he says, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. But working hard for something we love is called passion. We've lost, some of us, as we go along, some passion, and we bring home our stress instead. So why? And the reason for this commoditization that occurs, and then the why issues within our brains, is that many of our services these days in our firms are undifferentiated from those that are offered elsewhere. And what that means is that our customers or clients can't tell one of us apart from the other, not readily. And the only way that that client can make a decision then, a purchasing decision, is to make a decision that's based on price, because that's all he's got left. He can't differentiate on anything else. And so anytime that we have a market in which decision making is made on price, that's called a commoditized market. And some of those forces is what we're facing today in our profession. So we have some choices now, and everybody on this call and this webinar have a choice. We can accept this, we could seek to change it, and we can also look to other industries for some guidance. And I'm going to spend the rest of the webinar then on changing in some of the other industries. Before I get into some of the industries, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal geo journey or civil journey. And this took a turn for me personally when I fell in love with things on the dark side. And you might not define things this way, but I kind of do that. The dark side is us contractors, a geo contractor for me, and the bright side is where most of us live. That's in the field of consulting, right? So you're on the bright side, I'm on the dark side, and things a little on the dark side, when I made that change 20 years ago, look a little bit different over here. And when I made this change, I got to look over my shoulder and see my friends and myself, if you will, in a different light, because I could look and see how I behaved and how other people behave and what I thought and what other people think now. And I saw it from a different perspective, and I gained a view into the love that I've been losing. But I'm going to tell you something about us contractors that you may or may not know. I bet you suspect this, but us contractors, we wear costumes to hide our darkness. And the number one costume we wear is a dress shirt, right? So we have dress shirts, and most of us wear these dress shirts. And we get these dress shirts then to hide our darkness then from lots of different places, you know. And you think about getting a dress shirt from Target, and one from Macy's, Joseph A. Bank, or maybe Savile Row in London. And really the shirts, yeah, they're different as you go across this, but it's not really the shirts that are different from these different vendors. What happens is each of these vendors give us a unique experience, one that's highly differentiated from the other. Now, I'll give you some examples here. So if we buy our dress shirts from Target, then you know, Target's got its own unique feel. It's got the neon lights, and that's pretty cool. And you got the red carts, that's nice. And what's nice about Target, if you were blind, you could go into Target and you'd know you were in Target because it's got its special smell too, doesn't it, right? And so there's a set of experiences. And some of us like that. Probably early in our career, we went there for dress shirts. And then we graduated at some point to Macy's, because Macy's has kind of dimmer lights, and they have carpeting. We like carpeting, and so we'll pay a little bit more for our shirts, so they've got carpeting. Some of us then buy our shirts from Joseph A. Bank, and the differentiation there is they greet you at the door. They give you your size. They probably know you from past purchasing. They help you try your jackets on. It's a differentiated experience, a little bit more expensive. And then if you go to Savile Row, it's once again quite different. You know, they greet you at the door, they give you a back rub and a massage, and they give you the shirt that you want, and they steal your wallet. But there are a lot of people who are like that too. So the key, though, is each of these dress shirt providers offers its own unique value proposition that's highly differentiated from the other one. And the value proposition is not centered around the shirt. It's centered around the experience. So now we're going to go ahead and segue the conversation a little bit and talk about other industries with highly differentiated value propositions that they use to go ahead and differentiate themselves from other parts of that industry. And what I'm going to give you is I'm going to give you the value proposition that I think these firms have, and I'm going to ask you to guess which firm this is. So the first one is we give you a warehouse shopping experience for consistently low prices. Everybody know who that is? Could be a few, I think, but when I put these slides together, I thought Walmart. You know, that's what they do, right? There's another one. We get you there without any frills for a price without any frills. Guess that one? I'd say that's Southwest Airlines. Okay. Another one. We give you a technology that feels good at the highest price in the market. Highest price, not the lowest, but it feels good. And that's Apple. What's amazing about Apple is, I would say at least half of us on this call have an Apple iPhone in our pockets, and we pay the highest price because of the feeling that we get and the feeling of connectivity with Apple. The last one, we bring your family happiness at the price of our naming. You know, this is not a bid environment, right? And anybody who has children know that that has to be Disney. And you go down there and you'll pay anything to make your kids happy. And we all do, and we're happy about it as well. It's amazing how Disney makes us happy about paying the money for them making our families happy. Okay, so these are different value propositions. Let's bring this back to civil engineering. You know, what kind of value propositions could we have, and can we differentiate well with these different value propositions? And we're going to start with innovation. We all love to talk about innovation. The whole society likes to do that. And I'm going to challenge and see if we can be innovators here in the civil engineering field. So what types of things could we innovate or invent? And I listed a few of these things. Construction tools, maybe. Testing tools. Okay. Software. Most of us aren't software writers. Engineering methods. Most of us are not going to be inventing new engineering methods because, you know, we'd have some issues with our insurances, wouldn't we? So the real deal from my perspective is most of us who practice on the bright side of engineering really don't have much innovation, technology, if you will, opportunity to invent new things. It's hard to differentiate. The question for us is, do we have the DNA to innovate? And I would say absolutely. And absolutely, because we know this, because every decade of our history have had tremendous innovations and advancements. And so as civil engineers, we are innovative and inventive, but we just don't have business models that allow us to access those things readily, unless you're perhaps a specialty contractor. So let's get back to the question, how do we get our love back? How do we reinvigorate ourselves and our profession and beat back the forces of commoditization? Well, let's look at the most innovative industry in America today. Of course, it's in your pocket. And this is the IT industry, of course. And this also has a bright side and a dark side, at least in my view. The dark side is the contractors, folks who make things. That's Apple, right? And Samsung. And let's see, we pay them handsomely for their inventions. And often then they go bankrupt. Think about the cell phone providers, you know, the Nokia and the Ericsson and the all of the other preceders to the iPhone, and they're all bankrupt. So contractors make a lot of money and then they go bankrupt. But there's also a bright side of the IT industry, and these are the consultants that you hire to figure things out. Consultants you hire to create a web page or geospatial index or all kinds of things you do. And the value to you of these consultants is directly proportional to your inability to know the answer yourself. So think about website design. And 20 years ago or 10 years ago, we paid a lot of money for website design, and these days not so much because it's easier for us to do it ourselves these days. So although our business model does not reward product innovation, all is not lost in my view. There's other ways to innovate. Let's take, for example, coffee. So great coffee in 1980 looked like that. Those of us who are old enough to remember what Maxwell House tastes like, not so young. Coffee in 2000 or 2010 or 2020 looks like that. Starbucks, better stuff. Easy access, unmatched customer experience. The innovation in Starbucks is the experience. It's not just about the product. If you change the way the customer, your client experiences things, that is indeed innovation. And that's the opportunity that we have in our civil engineering profession. So is there room for innovation? You know, Amazon, for example, didn't invent book selling, right? But they perfected the efficiency of it. My company didn't invent ground improvement, but we're the first to use it in a design build model and bring it to you that way. When you change the way the customer interacts, that's innovation as well. So that's pretty cool. And we have some business model innovations occurring right now in our industry. Design build projects, that's a business model innovation causing us to have new challenges, new excitement. You know, we have a world of visualization. It's going on right now today in digitization. Many of us are still working on the paper environment or e-paper environment. You know, and there's lots of opportunity for those of us to offer innovative services here. And cloud-based predictive tools with smart investigations and smart analytics. These are opportunities for our firms as well. There's lots of stuff going on. I'm also going to talk for a minute about other types of service providers. You know, so engineers are service providers. We're in the service industry. And other folks that are in our service industry are folks like plumbers, hairstylists, dog trainers, carpet repair guy, and lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, engineers. Okay, so the question for you is, who's your best service provider? If you said today, who is your best service provider? Who are they and why of people like this? And I think what you would find that there's some common attributes of the best service providers. They tend to know your name. They know what you do and how their service fits you. They're flexible for you. Their service and relationship first, money second. Money is always a secondary thing with your best service provider. They exceed your expectations. It's about for them the value they add to your life. They never use price as a differentiator ever, and nor do we, or do we? And they use mistakes to deepen the relationship. You have a mistake with your favorite. If they make a mistake, they find a way to make it so much better that they overcome that mistake and more. You're even more deeply rooted with them. So the question for us as we think about innovative delivery systems of our firms, are we the best service providers to our customers? Do we fit these types of criteria? We also have some new things at hand, new things for us to really understand. We have big trends in the globe right now. Climate change is a big trend and an opportunity for us civil engineers, so is big data. And my world, the foundation world, we have things called rigid inclusions that people aren't quite used to handling, and load transfer platforms and organics. And there's some new things going on there. On the seismic environment, I'm a kind of a seismic guy. Things like earthquake drains and all kinds of mechanisms going on around the world and seismicity. We have new inventions. This is one of our new inventions for our company for supporting rail tracks, and it's kind of new. Now, the important thing for folks on the phone isn't all of these things. It's that those who understand the new things are those who provide the most amount of value to our clients. On the general civil things, we have things like intelligent compaction. We have big data. Big data is, there's no question, big data is coming. Those of us who can get our fingers wrapped around big data fast and fastest will be the best service providers to our customers. That's my opinion. So the best service providers and differentiators are ones that create bridges to the unknown, right? They actively seek to understand knowledge of new things and innovative things. They differentiate by creating bridges across that gap, bridges that other people can't easily reproduce. And an example then would be, this is an engineer with a specialized knowledge of X or Y or Z. So the question I would have for everybody on the phone is, are we that service provider? Do we have a specialized knowledge of that which not so easily understood? And are we providing it to our customers in a way that represents us as the best service providers, that's differentiable? And are we doing it in an environment like Starbucks that represents a great value to our customers? Right? And are we well differentiated in the marketplace? Not everybody can be Target, and not everybody wants to be Walmart, and not everybody can be Disney. What's important is that each of the service providers knows what your niche is, and you provide that in a way that's hard for others to imitate, like the smell in Target. One of the questions that Charles and Chris have asked me to address as well is, well, they said, well, you've done a lot of work with ASCE, and how does that impact some of the things that you're talking about? And what I would say to you is the service that I've done at ASCE in my career have been leveraged by me very much so to really understand these trends and to expand my personal sphere of influence beyond levels that I ever thought was imaginable. And now, as a result of the service, I have friends, and you will as well, that span many continents, definitely span America, and are true visionaries and people that know new things. So one of the ways to bring these things to your firms is, frankly, to get involved, expand our sphere of influence, and with those relationships, challenge ourselves on the differentiation viewpoint. I'll finish with just a few more slides here. One thing just to emphasize again, that differentiation then is the key. It's the antidote to commoditization. Some choose to differentiate with customer service, some with innovation, some with business model adaptations, but whatever it is that you choose, you have to know what your differentiated value proposition is and where that is in the marketplace. Innovation is good. That product is usually on the dark side. Customer experience, business models, and your bridge to the unknown. These are all ways in which we as service providers can differentiate our services. Which one do we choose? Well, that's up to us, each as individuals. What happens if we don't? Well, that's called commoditization, isn't it? And if we don't, well, then our customers will eventually choose us based on price because they have no other way. So how do you feel? This is our why. Simon Sinek teaches us that working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And we get our passion from tackling new things. We get our passion from solving problems that we haven't solved before. And luckily for us, we have so many new challenges in our profession today. All we have to do is lean forward and grab them. Mastering these techniques keeps us like these kids, keeps us young, excited, passionate about our profession. I'll give you some parting thoughts here before we finish up. I'll go one more slide after this. And that is, our profession is full of amazing people, absolutely amazing people. And, you know, I do some work with finance folks. I'm in New York with private equity folks and get to do a lot of stuff. There are no better people, in my view, and no more people that I would want to have a beer with or spend time with than civil engineers. So we have a great profession. We're really lucky to be in this profession, at least in my view. I'm lucky to be part of you. Okay, so you know, my challenge was not to spend too much time. Hope you left in a good spot. Not too stressed out, not too sleep deprived. Thank you for the privilege of being with everybody today. That's all I have. love to take some questions.
Cord, that was very good. We thank you for that. We had one question in the chat. If you could please define what commoditization is.
I'm sorry. So the question is something about commoditization. Say again.
Yes, if you could please define what commoditization is.
Yeah, commoditization is then the lack of differentiation in the marketplace by anything other than price. Right? Think about any commoditized product that you want to buy. Soy is a good product. Corn, right? It's a commodity because there's no differentiator other than price. Make sense?
Hey, Cord, this is Tom Shipwright. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good, good. Sounds like it. Would you, I enjoyed your presentation very much. Would you be able to comment a little bit on maybe how this commoditization versus innovation and differentiation might be part of a company or organization's culture? And do you think that that can change or does change over time as a company or organization goes along its aging and growth process?
Yeah, I guess, you know, the only constant in life is change, right? So I think that if you're a company, to think that the service offerings and to think that your position in the marketplace stays constant with time is not correct. And what happens is firms that get into and people that get into those types of thinking, they ended up getting commoditized, and those are the folks that tend to whine a lot, frankly, about commoditization. I might say to this, Tom, that the reason I started giving these talks about 6-7 years ago is because I heard so much disenfranchisement within the profession as it interacted with other engineers, and folks who would say things like, we need to educate our customers, clients, relative to the value of our services. And my view is that's not the case at all. The case is that the customers can't differentiate your services from other service providers. So no matter how much education you do, if you don't differentiate, you won't get there. Your question was really about change management, and change management is something that comes from leadership. So the important thing is for the leadership of the company to recognize that there is a position in the marketplace for the service offerings that you have. There is a position for Walmart. Some of us have to be the Walmart of civil engineering. There is a position in the marketplace for Joseph A. Bank, right? And some of us need to know what that is. The most important thing, Tom, in my view, is that we know what that value proposition is, and we highly differentiate that value proposition, and we practice it and become the best service providers in that space. And once you do that, then you can choose how you want to differentiate within that space.
Oh, God damn it.
Okay. And, if, let's see, if you do that, then we'll be successful. I'm not sure I answered your question okay, Tom.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Cord.
Thanks. Yeah, and you know, your firm has gone through a lot of change as well, right? So, all good. Change is good. Other questions?
Hey, Cord, I have one. This is Chaz Webb. Do you think it's possible for any engineering firms to develop a blue ocean strategy?
Okay, Chaz, is it possible for engineering firms to develop what kind of strategy?
A blue ocean strategy?
Blue ocean. I do, but I think that most of us civil engineers tend not to have the vision for it, right? And most of us we're linear thinkers. You know, there's another talk that I give occasionally about process of innovation and what happens in your mind, you know, to get to an inventive new system or product. And you know, there's a left brain and the right brain stuff, and you have to be a very right brain person to have the imagination to see where that future is. I do think that there's firms in the IT industry that cross over into the geo industry that have blue ocean strategies, but most of us not so much that are service practitioners. I hope that wasn't too depressing.
It clarifies things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. That's just an opinion. You know, we all have our opinions, and if, in fact, most of this talk was lots of opinions there. Other questions? Well, if not, I would like to say this, and that is, it used to be that I got out and got to see a lot of folks during the year, and that's not happened so much here in the last half a year or so. But I am looking forward to seeing you all in the Raleigh part of the state, and thank you very, very much for having me today. It's a real fun thing for me and a privilege. So thank you all.
Yeah.